Hello, everyone. Today we're diving into the critical topic of ransomware threats and data protection strategies. With us here today is an experienced industry expert, Sotero CEO and co-founder, Purandar, who will share his insights and advice on how organizations can navigate these challenges effectively. Hi, and thank you for joining me. So can you share your experience and journey in the cybersecurity field, and how did your career start?
Sure. My background is actually technology. Most of my career, I actually was in marketing technology. I've been the CTO at two of the largest marketing services providers in the country. Some of them, actually one of them in the world too now. Dealing with consumer data or sensitive data from our customers is what actually kind of got me interested in privacy and security, and the challenges of trying to enforce security and privacy without impacting business operations. And looking at that as a challenge and an opportunity, kind of started to think about how we could make it easier for organizations to achieve their privacy and security goals without impacting or without that becoming an obstacle for their business operations.
And so, as a CEO, what does security mean to you, especially in the context of being the CEO and founder?
A great question. Security, people typically tend to think of security as being an obstacle, as a barrier. In some ways, it is. It should be an obstacle and a barrier for people that are trying to steal information or to expose sensitive information. But by the same token, it also has to be an enabler for business operations or business processes. Without the second aspect in there, it tends to become something that people or organizations don't embrace, because what it does is it has an adverse impact on revenue, operations, efficiency, etc. So for me, it means being able to keep confidential information secure, being able to keep it out of the hands of malicious actors, but still enabling business operations to occur normally at the speed of business, as you would say.
And can you share insights into the current landscape of ransomware threats, particularly within the financial services and healthcare pharma sectors?
Sure. I mean, I think all you have to do is go to a news website or open the newspaper. There's a new instance every day, and there's a massive one that's impacting millions of consumers right now as we speak. Right, the healthcare the organization that's been impacted by ransomware, that has had to cut off its isolates the operations, where impacting payments and prescription steps out. The scope of ransomware truly is extremely broad, and the definition is a point in time definition, because the attackers are constantly evolving. Every advance that's done on the technology side, on the operational side, is easily defeated as they identify new vulnerabilities, new ways to get into the organization. What ransomware started off as a way to disrupt operations, right? I mean, that used to be a objective early on, like get into an organization and disrupt their operations. That used to be the reward. Then it transitioned to, if we can do that, we can make them pay us to become operational again, right? From there, it kind of quickly evolved into saying, if we're in there and we're able to disrupt operations, we can also get our hands on their sensitive information. That is where things are today, because getting the attackers getting their hands on information is the most profitable outcome from their perspective. Ironically, it also turns out to be the worst thing that can happen to an organization. Right, you've lost your proprietary information. You've broken your promise to your customers about keeping their data secure. Now it's in the public, and on top of that, you have financial and legal implications that you're facing. So, I mean, ransomware today ends up from being disrupting a thing, to stealing data, to extracting money and causing a huge amount of financial pain to the organization, but also a lot of emotional stress and loss of privacy to the consumers that organizations promise to keep the data secure.
Mm-hmm. And so, as someone with experience in the data protection industry, what are the key challenges you've observed in preventing ransomware attacks?
Yeah, so if you look at it from the inside out, right, the basic thing that attackers are trying to get to is data or information. When you think about what exists today in terms of data security or cybersecurity, it focuses on everything but the data. And that goes back to the reason that I said before. What organizations have experienced is If you try to protect data, it becomes a barrier to your business operations. So they've started to kind of go down this path of layering on peripheral protections, whether it's the network access management, et cetera, to the point that the data has never been protected. The challenge of trying to protect a periphery is just massive, because when you think of an organization and the number of users, the number of integration points, the number of applications that interact with it, the number of locations, it's impractical in today's world to believe that you can completely secure a network or a periphery. So the switch has to be is where you actually start protecting the data. And then you'll read this everywhere today. It's like, it's not a question of if, it's a question of when an organization gets hacked into, right? Assuming that to be the case, organizations that need to shift their focus and say, let's protect the data because that's what they're after. If there's some amount of disruption, you can recover from the disruption. But if the data is lost, you really can't recover from that, because the data, once it's out of your control in somebody else's hands, there's nothing you can do.
And so, in your opinion, what role does data encryption play in ransomware prevention? How can organizations implement it effectively?
So it's actually not a single answer, right? I mean, encryption plays a big part, because fundamentally, in a very simplistic way, if your data is encrypted and a attacker comes in and steals your data, what you've done is you've rendered the data useless to them. They can't hold you hostage for it. They can't threaten to release the information, or they can't sell that information because they can't get access to it. So that's number one. But you also want to use a encryption algorithm mechanism approach that enables your operations to run on it even while the data is being kept encrypted, because that does two things. Now, one is your data is protected even if you lose it. Second is it doesn't become a barrier for your regular operations to proceed, right? Then the third part of it is threat detection and prevention, right? Just like people do at the endpoint, saying we should be able to identify when we're being hacked or when somebody's trying to get in. Today, mechanisms and software exist where you can actually detect a threat at the data level. So you put all of this together, the ability to proactively monitor and detect and prevent a threat. You keep the data encrypted so that there's no loss of privacy and you're compliant. And equally importantly, you're making sure that the data, if it were to get stolen, is useless to the person or the people that stole it.
Mhm. And so, what are some proactive measures that organizations should take to enhance their resilience against ransomware attacks?
Sure. I mean, the three pronged approach, which ironically is what we sell, is what you need to protect your data, right? Keep the data encrypted, monitor it in real time actively for threats, and defeat the threats, right? Everything including ransomware. Plus, you make sure that the data stays encrypted if it gets exfiltrated from your organization. Those are the three things that you should pull together into a package, into a bundle, and deploy it in addition to whatever you do at the periphery, at the network level, because the attacks are extremely complex. It's not that one software is going to solve everything. All of these have to work complementary to each other. You monitor your network, you monitor access, but you also make sure your data is protected in isolation as well.
Mm-hmm. And so, if breach does happen, what should the organization do to recover as soon as possible and to mitigate the damage? How important is to have a good recovery strategy?
It's absolutely critical, right? I mean, especially, I mean, the latest example of the ransomware attack that we're talking about, when it impacts the health and lives of millions of consumers, it's critical that you have a way to restore or recover from your thing. And that starts from multiple things. One is having a verifiable and valid backup, right? Which most organizations claim they do, but backups, just having a backup is not sufficient. Having a reliable backup that lets you restore quickly and incrementally is critical. Protecting the backup just like you would protect your data asset, because the backup is nothing but data, right? That's equally critical. And then monitoring the backup as well as your data for threats to active threats to it is also critical, because when you bundle all of this together, you identify a threat in real time. Even if it got past you, you're able to contain it, identify the limited damage that it does, go to your protected backup, and be able to recover from the backup rapidly.
Mm-hmm. And How important is employee training and awareness in preventing ransomware attacks, especially in highly regulated industries? And how can we educate efficiently?
It is critical, right? I mean, educating employees, like every learning process, is an ongoing and a continuous thing. It's not a point in time, right? I mean, the common things about phishing and being aware of social engineering scams, all of that is thing, but some portion of the employees have to be educated on the threats that are constantly evolving. Because once you train yourself on something, you only look for that where the threats are continuing to evolve. Keeping that the training updated with evolving threats, evolving software, evolving approaches is critical. You also asked a question about how do you make this effective, right? Training, an incentive-based approach, right? When most organizations throw training at you and say it's mandatory, if you don't do this, you're not going to have access. I mean, that works, right, to some extent, but there's not motivation or drive for employees to get involved in that. If there's incentives behind that as to what additional skills they're learning, what else they can get from that, and make that an interactive process, it becomes a lot easier to employees to get employees engaged.
Mhm. And can you share any successful examples where data-centric security measures effectively prevented ransomware attacks?
Yeah, I mean, we have our customers that use us for that, where they're able to detect data exfiltration threats, whether it's an internal bad actor, an external bad actor, or an attempt to corrupt the data. I mean, obviously, you'll understand why I can't talk about our customers' specific names, but we have customers in telco, financial services, and big pharma that use us for exactly that purpose.
So, what emerging technologies or trends do you see as promising for enhancing ransomware prevention efforts in financial services and healthcare pharma?
People, the emerging technology, which it's a couple of things. One is the AI, which is actually accelerating hardware performance. That could play a massive part. It will also play a part in enabling the safe and secure use of large language models. Right. I mean, most organizations are afraid to take advantage of LLMs or AI today because they're concerned about the loss of privacy, copyright issues, and leakage of data into a model. But the adoption of today's data-centric cybersecurity towards building a secure interaction platform for LLMs, I think, is extremely appealing because that enables a lot of efficiency in process and in knowledge, leveraging all of the past learnings from prior cybersecurity incidents, prior cybersecurity practices, and being able to implement them in the form of code snippets or in the form of training manuals. All of this is going to get accelerated as organizations start to put trust into a platform that enables them to interact with LLM securely.
Mhm. Okay, thank you so much. And maybe as the last question, as the CEO of a data protection company, what advice would you give to organizations looking to improve their ransomware prevention and cybersecurity posture in general?
I think, I mean, what I say is there's a lot of technology and there's a lot of confusion about what products can do what. Like I said, I think ransomware is a problem that's not just going to get solved by the 2 or 3 products you already have. I think organizations need to take a fresh look and say the big challenge for us is our data or information, because that's what drives the organization. That's what customers trust us with. So start from a data-centric perspective, look for specific products or platforms that help you build cyber resiliency around your data or your information, because that makes you sleep better at night. It also makes you be more effective and be able to recover from a ransomware attack quicker.
Mhm. Okay, thank you so much again.